resurrection, then we're talking about miracles. Now we're talking about biblical content. Now we're talking about the existence of God. And if we're talking about the existence of God, then we have to talk about how we ought to behave and what we must do to be saved. Because if this God truly made the universe and everything in it, then we better listen to what he has to say. And that's the real question. I don't care if the earth is trillions of years old. It doesn't matter, because it still needs a creator in my personal beliefs. Now, let's go back even further than what you guys said. You guys mentioned the earth not having void. Do you guys know a man by the name of Albert Einstein?
Oh, sure.
Everybody knows Albert Einstein. Well, in 1916, Albert Einstein didn't like where his calculations were leading him. You know that he came up with the theory of general relativity, right?
Right.
Okay, well, the theory of general relativity, it would mean that the universe had a beginning. So as he was calculating the stars and mapping the planets and looking at how the Earth shifted in season, and scientifically he was trying to come up with this idea that the universe was actually eternal. And that's really important to know, because there was a lot of men like Einstein who thought the same thing, that before the theory of general relativity was confirmed, they thought that the universe was eternal. Now, if the universe is eternal, that doesn't necessarily disprove God, but it certainly makes it harder as a case, because then we can start playing with that. But what they find out much later, in 1916, they found out that his calculations were indeed revealing a definite beginning of all time, all matter, and all space. This flew in the face of his belief that the universe was static and eternal. Okay, so he had this idea that the universe had no beginning, but then he found out that his theory of general relativity was true, and one of those men that helped him figure that out was a man by the name of Hubble. Do you guys know who Hubble is?
The Hubble telescope.
They made the Hubble telescope, and what did they find? Do you remember what happened when Einstein looked in that Hubble telescope?
No.
He saw that the universe was expanding. In other words, when they measured two different stars that were side by side, they noticed that year after year they were drifting further apart, which means that if you rewind time, what would happen to those stars? If you saw two stars that were 2 inches apart from each other, and you rewound the tape thousands of millions of years, what would you do? What would you see those stars start to do?
Explain.
Well, okay, you got two stars that are 2 inches apart. You're looking in a telescope, right? Okay, and every year they're getting further and further apart. If you rewound the records, if you hit the rewind button, what would you see those stars start to do? The stars would get further apart, or would they come closer together?
They're probably, assume they're getting further apart, I guess.
Well, no, if you're going forward in time and the stars are drifting further apart from each other, that means if you hit the rewind button,
rewind,
the stars
they're
become
getting closer to each other, okay.
They're getting closer, right. So what happened was Einstein discovered, and he called it, by the way, a thorn in his side or a thorn in his flesh. He couldn't stand that the universe was not eternal. And the reason he knew this is because when they measured these stars, most scientists would agree now that the universe had a beginning. If you rewound that tape long enough, you would get the whole universe to fit in one little dot. So in other words, before there was a dot, what was there?
A void, I guess.
Oh, a void. There was nothing.
Yeah, total
nothing.
Void, nothing.
Nothing. Now, let me ask you guys a simple question. I'm going to ask the audience, and they can respond and write emails, whatever. Before, if you can remember back to when you were in elementary school, and your teacher sat you down and taught you about this concept of nothing. Now, I don't know if elementary school teachers teach you about nothing necessarily or the concept of nothing. But what would they tell us? What would you tell a little child? If a little child came to you and said, could you explain what nothing is? How would you define nothing? How personally would you explain it to a child?
Nothing?
Yeah, how do you explain nothing to a child?
Well, if you were to talk to the child about something that he or she might understand, like a toy, and say they're holding a toy in their hands, and then all of a sudden the toy is gone, then they would have nothing. There would be
Do you
nothing.
think that everybody should teach kids that concept? If in other words, and I'm not talking about in our curriculums necessarily. I'm asking you just a simple question. If a child came up to you or any adult and said, "Mister, could you please explain to me what nothing is?" Do you think, Mark, they ought to explain it that way, that nothing is a void of something?
There would be no other way to explain it.
Okay, I want you to stop there and
you're
just
also
think
taking
about it.
into account the fact that the child has to have a lot of knowledge to comprehend something like that.
Well, yeah, and I'm kind of using this as an example. If one of my children, who are, they're all still pretty young, I have going to be a 12-year-old soon. But if she came up to me and asked me what that was, I would explain it just like that. That nothing is a void of something. It is no time, no space, no matter. Period. And that's, it seems like we're wasting time on our show talking about this, but this is important because the argument is, if we're going to talk about evolution and creation, the very first thing we need to comprehend as adults, and you would be shocked how much argument is wasted in this concept, that nothing really is nothing, period. There's no time, no space, no matter. And before that little dot came on the scene, and however God decided to explode it, there was nothing. And I don't care if you think that was trillions of years ago or 6,000 years ago, there was a beginning to the universe. You guys following me? I really want you to get this. Okay, now, why is that important? It's important because we may not get past stage 1 tonight. And I say that laughing because you would be shocked how many people have a problem with what I'm about to say. Guys, here's an easy question for you. If no time, no space, and no matter existed before that dot, then what caused time, space, and matter?
Wow. To say that that's a heavy statement would be an understatement.
It's an important question.
I agree.
Excuse me?
It's an important question.
I said yes, it's a very important question.
I don't know how
because
you would...
the way you... Yeah. Well, let's go back to the beginning. No time, no space, no matter. Did energy create the Big Bang?
That's basically what they're talking about.
Like a cosmic vacuum, Lawrence Krauss.
Yeah.
What is a cosmic vacuum?
It's funny, you're talking and I'm thinking, saying to myself...
We have no what Marc is thinking is we have no real explanation.
No, what I'm saying is, I'm thinking of, I'm hearing the music to 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you something funny, okay? Hey,
Are you laughing at me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen.
You guys
because that's what I think of when you say that.
Listen, last week's show, What I did
Yeah.
was I made I took a very lighthearted approach to it. What I said was God was up in the sky with his bunch of angels and friends there laughing around and just joking around. All of a sudden he burped. And that created Earth. That created the universe.
Nice.
And from there he decided,
Felix, that's adorable.
That's how I explained it.
Well, it's a great way to explain it to a kid. Let me tell you.
And from that, God
little
decided,
child.
let's not make this go to waste. Let's go ahead and build on it, which he did. And from that, there was the universe was created. Earth came about, and 7 days could have been 7 billion years. We don't know what a God day is.
Mm-hmm.
And this is his 7th day now. This is his day of rest that we're in right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know.
Do you know
how
what that
long
means?
it's gonna last.
What does it mean for God to rest? You mean he took a nap?
No, I think you just let the things develop and see what happens and see how man actually.
No, his boss told him he wasn't going to get paid for the day, so he says, I'm not doing anything.
Well, I'll tell you. The Old Testament talks about a 7-day rest, and that's actually where the Sabbath concept comes from. But Jesus clarifies what the 7th day is. But let's go back on the topic, and then we'll discuss that in a minute. So, in the beginning, you had nothing. You see, there's a problem. There's a problem in argument point A. And you would be shocked how often this particular concept is argued. Lawrence Krauss is I don't know if he's a physicist or a mathematician, but he's an atheist. And he goes around the world preaching the atheistic message, debunking Christianity. And here's what he says, and I kid you not, this was rebuked by an atheist professor in Columbia University. I'm actually trying to find I know where it is. This is what he says. He says, I don't care, and he actually kind of swore, I won't say it for the sake of the show, I don't care what you think the concept nothing is or what philosophers think nothing is. The kind of nothing that I believe in has something in it, and I'm going to stick with that. That was his argument, if you will, of what nothing is. Now, he also goes on and explains in this particular book, which was Something Out of Nothing. It was actually a book that he wrote to try to explain something out of nothing about this cosmic vacuum concept. Sorry, I'm looking for this book. I went around and just give me a second here. According to God's actions, let's see. Oh, well, I can't find it right this second. Oh. Yeah, aiming at God, Krauss. No matter, sorry, I'm reading a book. I'm actually trying to find the quote right now where Krauss says, and he explains in his book what he thinks nothing is. And I'm going to read you a kind of an insert from it, but can't find it. The Universe from Nothing, Why There Is Something Rather Than Nothing is the name of his book. And Krauss seems to think that philosophers are not talking about reality. In fact, when in fact that's exactly what philosophy is, the study of ultimate reality. The problem for Krauss is twofold. First, reality is not merely physical stuff. Since nature and the laws of physics themselves had a beginning, ultimately reality is beyond nature or supernatural. Therefore, despite claiming to explain how the universe came from nothing, Krauss has explained nothing. The second problem is far more serious intellectual disease that infects the thinking of Krauss and several other prominent atheists as well. This disease is so severe that it threatens the accuracy of the very science they seek to promote. Krauss, like Dawkins and Hawkins,